One of the first things you want to do when setting up a different stake size is adjusting the hold down tube about a quarter to a 3/8 inch above the stakes that you're trying to run. This allows enough room for the stake to slide down and still lets the hold down spring have enough tension when the stake rolls into the pocket of the clamp. In order to adjust that hold down tube, you need to loosen these two bolts that the arrows are pointing to, along with these two bolts that the two bottom arrows are pointing to, and at that point the hold down tube should be loose. Then you'll use the threaded T-handle bolt at the top of the screen to adjust it up or down, then go back and tighten all four bolts back up. The next thing you're going to want to do is loosen these two bolts to adjust your rack. After the two bolts are loosened, you're going to use these two T-bolts to adjust the rack into the correct position. The other thing you can do is move the rack endways closer or further away from the head. This will allow you to put more of a point on the stake or less of a point. The rack should be adjusted so that when the stake is all the way down on the rack, the pickup wheel will come around and hits the top 1/8 inch of the stake. This will allow the stake to rotate a quarter turn into the clamp. Notice the hole in the center of the clamp. A 2072 model will have two holes because of the wider clamp. The hole is for a spacer piece that gets bolted in with a 3/8/16 countersink bolt. The only time you'll ever need these spacers is when you're running rectangular stakes. Each spacer is a 1/4 inch thick. So for example, let's say you're trying to run a 2x1 stake, you would take the difference, 2 inch minus 1 inch, and divide that by 2. You'd get a 1/2 inch. So you'll need two spacers to make the clamp the stake closer to center. Again, these spacers are only used when you're running rectangles. Now that you have the hold down tube and the rack set, you could cycle a stake into the pocket manually. This will make it much easier while you're trying to center the head on the stake. To center the head, the first thing you want to do is take a 15/16 wrench or socket and loosen the bolt right behind the plunger box. The second thing you want to do is loosen this nut. This nut is up by the threaded rod on the front side of the plunger box. At that point, you can use the eccentric handle to adjust the head. Because the handle is eccentric, the head will move back as it moves up. To finish fine-tuning, you'll need to use the threaded rod to make minor up and down adjustments. After you have the head where you want it, just tighten the bolts back up and you should be ready to run.